Hey guys, we are back, and I want to say welcome to everyone to a very special The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild gameplay analysis and graphics and frame rate discussion video. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Also, I suggest everyone set their video settings on 1080p 60 frames per second because we will be going over something very interesting later in the video in regards to the frame rate. So stay tuned for that. And let's get started. So we had the Breath of the Wild Life in Ruins trailer that started the Game Awards the other day, and it gave a very brief overview of the setting of the game being taking place in a dark atmosphere. The world has been destroyed and things are basically going bad for the land of Hyrule. And there were some really interesting things though in the video that we want to discuss, both from a technical standpoint and as far as what is going on in the video as far as the enemies and certain things that I noticed. So the trailer started off when we got a glimpse of some of the people that live in Hyrule that are not Link. And they showed very clearly that these individuals are basically the town folk, and they were fighting against the enemies that were coming to attack them and to destroy their land, basically. So we got a glimpse of that, which I thought was interesting, that we finally got to see some of the people that live in Hyrule and some of the animals and just some of the normal ways of life going on there. Then it cuts to a scene that appears to be Zelda dressed up in a tunic similar to Link. And then the trailer cuts to Link, and you see the back of him here with the Master Sword on his back, which is obviously the Master Sword, you can tell right away. And then he sees what appears to be one of the Rito from The Legend of Zelda the Wind Waker fly up into the air and go to this airship. And of course, if we look closely at the face of that Rito, he looks just like Falco from Star Fox, right? Well, in that picture he kind of does, and that was a joke going on Twitter. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. But we see him fly off into this airship, and the airship was speculated on before from the E3 demo as being an airship and not just part of a structure somewhere else in Hyrule. So I thought that was really interesting. Then the trailer cuts to real-time gameplay of Link on the horse fighting the Guardians. I thought this was one of the best scenes in the trailer because it showed some really cool graphical effects. If we look at it by slow motion and screen by screen, we'll see a lot of cool effects taking place in this scene. So we see the Guardians start shooting lasers at Link and the horse, and if you look here, you see the beam coming out from the Guardian, and it shoots that blue laser at him. And then you see these flares pop up right away on the left and right side of that blue beam. And I wasn't sure what it was at first, but obviously then when they go forward, you can tell that it's actually the structure exploding and shooting out those beams of orange light coming from the shot from the Guardian. So I thought that was a cool graphical effect that I noticed. And the animation was fantastic with the horse jumping over the structure when it blew up. And you could see the hair on the horse flying up in the air and flying down when they landed. And then it cut to the next scene right away with Link with an axe on the horse going right up to the Guardian to attack him. If you look closely, you can see that the laser sensor is targeted right onto Link, and it's homing in on him, ready to shoot, and he's going closer and closer and closer. And then when he gets close enough, he strikes, and the laser pointer is still on Link. And then if you look even closer as the scene progresses, you'll see that the other Guardian, which is to the left, his sensor does finally attach to Link. So you can kind of get an idea of how far the Guardian's laser pointer is from sensing an oncoming target. And it was interesting that even though Link did strike the leg of the Guardian, the sensor still remained pinpointed on him directly. And it wasn't on the horse, it was on Link. So these Guardians know they need to target Link and not the horse. Which is kind of interesting, since you would think that maybe they would target the horse if he's riding the horse to demobilize him at first. But they want to target Link directly here, so I thought that was interesting. Then the trailer shows everything getting destroyed and desolate waste to the land of Hyrule. And something happening to Link. He's getting surrounded by some kind of mysterious energy that's taking over his body, and he doesn't know what's going on. And then we see at the end of the trailer Link bowing down, possibly behind Zelda, and you can see her hand and you can see his Master Sword there as well. So a couple of things I wanted to point out technically about this trailer was that there was some frame rate hitches in some of the spanning shots of the world. But when they show gameplay, it seemed to run just fine in the trailer, and it looked to be like 30 frames per second. There's some hitches here and there when Link was running away from the Guardian and fighting the Guardian there. But for the most part, it ran just fine in that part. And another thing I noticed was that in these close-up shots, that when we saw Link, being surrounded by that energy, and the scene with the Rito and the airship, and then the last scene with Link and Zelda, those appear to be rendered cutscenes using in-game models, since the image quality looked completely different in those compared to the actual gameplay. There were no jaggies, everything looked perfect and smooth. So it appears to me that those scenes may have been PC rendered for this trailer, because there was a difference in image quality between those scenes and the actual gameplay scenes that they showed. So that was the Life in Ruins trailer, and now we can move on to the 4-minute gameplay that they showed with Bill Trinen. So we see Link talking to what appears to be one of the members of the Rito again, and his name is Cass, and he has some song notes on his belt, and he plays the accordion. It does look like he gives you some hints about where to go in the game, and some riddles basically. Then it cuts to a scene with Link going into a new area, and you can see on the bottom left hand corner that it's saving automatically for you. So I think that's great that the game autosaves for you and you don't have to pause and go into the menu and save that way, because I know in previous Zelda games that was a chore to always have to remember to stop and save in certain areas of the game. Then we see Link fighting an enemy in a big open grassy area, and he gets attacked, and the enemy takes away 7.5 hearts from him from one big hit. Now you notice there that Link had a power booster on his heart containers, so not only did he lose 7.5 hearts, but he also lost the ability to have those 3 extra hearts that he was carrying as well. Because Link can upgrade his heart containers temporarily by using various different food items that boost his health. But as you see here, when he got hit, he lost 7.5 hearts, and now he only has 7 total hearts when he did have 10 at first. You see here there's a lot of nice detail on the ground with the textures on the rocks and on the grass. It's really, really good looking, especially for the Wii U. In fact, it reminds me a little bit of Xenoblade Chronicles X with how good the detail was up close on certain rock meshes of the game. It looks like Nintendo learned something from Monolith Soft when they made this game, so it looks really good in some areas. Then we saw Link going into a new area, and Bill got killed by one of the enemies, and then we saw them try an alternate route, which would be known as the more stealthy route. And I think that's really cool as well, is that Nintendo's giving you other options to use when going into certain areas. They don't just give you one option, there are other routes to take, possibly a stealthy way and a more direct way. So depending on how good you are, you could survive going the direct way or just hiding and going past that part and going in a different direction to get to your same destination. Then we saw a scene where they were approaching this cave, and there was what appeared to be 2 cactus-like vines on the right and left side in front of Link, and of course they popped up and they were actually enemies that were in chameleon type form, and Link had to go and fight them. So I thought that was really cool that you got some creatures that are going to be hiding in who knows where, and you have to make sure as a player to know how to spot them and how to attack them, obviously. And then the footage ended with Link fighting a big tall creature there with a big club, and of course getting past him and then stopping from there. They weren't going to show what was going to happen next because they were going to enter into a new area and they wanted to save some surprises, they said. Alright, so getting done with all of that, let's talk about this frame rate. So the game looked great running on the Wii U and it had lots of graphical detail, but a lot of people have criticized that the frame rate simply looks framey. Just a little too noticeable that there is a lower frame rate than 30 frames per second. And I noticed something really interesting when I watched this. It's because I played this game at E3 back in June, and the game was running fine. In fact, it was running at 30 frames per second with some drops here and there, and it wasn't really a big distraction at all. So what I did was I looked at this footage, and I looked at the footage from Digital Foundry, and they show that the game was locked at 30 frames per second for a lot of the time. Besides when there's a lot of physics going on with the fire and with multiple enemies on the screen, the game did slow down to the low 20s in the frame rate analysis. And if you look at this entire 4-minute footage, it didn't really look like the game was slowing down. It looked like the game was locked at a low frame rate. And it looks like it was locked at 24 frames per second. And if you look at the film frame rate of how they filmed the video itself, you can tell that the actual film of the actors that are not in the game are at 24 frames per second. Basically the same frame rate that you see when you go to a movie theater. And I did a side-by-side comparison, and I'm going to show it here with the Digital Foundry video and this video, and you can tell very clearly that the game was running much smoother noticeably at E3 than it was in this video. And since I played it myself, guys, I can tell that the game was not running like that when I played it at E3. It was running pretty much smoothly most of the time with some drops here and there. In this gameplay footage, it's running at the same slower frame rate pretty much the entire time. Even when there's not much going on the screen, the game still runs at the same frame rate. So it appears to me to be locked at 24 frames per second for this gameplay footage only. So personally, I'm not too worried about the frame rate of this game because I know what it looked like when I played it at E3. Of course, obviously it's only going to be improved, not worse, later on in production. And some people said, oh, the Wii U just can't handle this game. I don't personally buy that because it's not like Nintendo to have the game run at a certain frame rate for a long period of time and then have an entire scene where the game is basically locked at 24 frames per second. That doesn't sound like Nintendo quality to me, and this game has one of the highest budgets, if not the highest budget, that Nintendo has ever done for a video game. I did my own personal test of 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second, and 60 frames per second, and I forced my gameplay footage to be 24 frames per second and 30 and 60, for example. So I'm going to show you a video clip of what 24 frames per second looks like versus 30 frames per second for the same exact video. So let's take a look.
Rocket science. Rocket science. Rocket science.
So if you look at that 24 frames per second, you can force the video to be at that frame rate and make it appear to be actually lower than what it really is. 30 frames per second and 24 frames per second is a big difference because once you drop below 30 frames per second, the naked eye can really start seeing those individual frames in the gameplay. So I really doubt that Nintendo did this on purpose, but it looks like they encoded this at 24 frames per second in the actual filming of this video and then put it on YouTube at 1080p 60 frames per second because the one Nintendo uploaded was 1080p 60 frames, but the actual video being outputted was 24 frames per second, and you could tell in the video. That was something really odd that I noticed, because like I said, I played the game and the game was not distracting like that with the frame rate at all. So I really don't think we have too much to worry about with the actual performance of this game on the Wii U. Most likely we shouldn't have to worry about the Switch version either. But in regards to the Wii U version, I don't think it's going to be getting worse and worse when it gets closer to release. It's only going to be getting better. And since we have a lot of time left before the game is released, obviously we don't have a date, but I'm thinking it's not going to be coming out for the Switch at launch in March. Probably going to be later on in the year. It's rumored to be coming out in summer. So we shall see how the game is faring in another 6 months or so. But we still have quite a long ways to go until this game is released. So those are some of the things I noticed in this video I wanted to share with you guys. It's a different analysis video than some of the other YouTube channels where they're focusing on story and hidden secrets and stuff like that. I wanted to focus on something a little different in my video, so I hope you guys did enjoy it. Alright guys, please hit that like button, subscribe, and comment, and I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Take care.